I don't want to exaggerate. The Last of Us is one of the greatest video games of all time. I have personally played through it over 10 times, and it never fails to break me down and rock me to my core. It forces us to face the tragic reality of loss, grief, and shows us what it means to be human, the difference between mere survival and truly living. There are essays and analysis videos that fundamentally misunderstand the core of this game, claiming its simple plot isn't engaging enough to be considered great, and that it's contradictory in its message of life when the gameplay is so heavily focused on death. But one of the most tragic things that I've seen is the misunderstandings of the characters in this world. And there's one particular character that is treated so poorly by both haters of the game and fans alike, which is tragic because their background and actions perfectly mirror the themes of the story and push our characters to their inevitable choices at the end. So let's take a look at the most underrated character in all of The Last of Us, Bill, and why his level is more than just a simple fetch quest. Bill is a survivor of the cordyceps outbreak that ruined the world. We don't have much background on him other than that he had a partner named Frank and knows Joel and Tess from their smuggling days, and he's the last surviving member of Lincoln, Massachusetts, appropriately named Bill's town in the game. He has the entire town booby-trapped due to the unusually large amount of infected that roam nearby. Of course, when Joel and Ellie disable tons of those traps on their way into town, it upsets him. Joel asks Bill where to find a car. Bill is livid at this large request, especially after what they've just done to all his traps. But in the end, he is reminded of the debts that he owes Joel and reluctantly agrees. After nearly getting himself killed helping them get a car battery, they stumble across the body of his partner, Frank, who had hung himself shortly after being bitten. After pushing through the emotional trauma, he helps to get the car started, and Joel and Ellie ride off, and we never see Bill again. His time in the game is short, and a lot of people only viewed his role as surface level, a means to an end to get Joel and Ellie across the country faster. If anyone watching this video stopped digging into the characters here, I beg you to dig deeper. There is much more here than a lot of people realize. Bill is highly skeptical, suspicious of others, and emotionally distant. He is fearful of the world that he lives in, and uses that fear to push him to find ways to keep himself safe, stockpiling weapons, using his mechanical talents to trap his home, and coming up with backup plans in case things go awry. He does all of this while keeping people at arm's length because in his experience, other people are only a hindrance. In other words, he is the perfect survivor. He leaves next to nothing up to chance, has his life routinely scheduled out, and is isolated from anything that could cloud his judgment, even when it comes to people he knows, like Joel. His first instinct is to check for signs of infection, to treat him as a potential enemy until it's proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that he can be trusted. And only after he confirms that Joel and Ellie aren't a threat, his next steps is to get them out of his town as quickly as possible. His assistance fixing up the truck is not done by any altruism. It's done because Joel says that Bill owes him. The sooner he can clear his debt with Joel, the sooner Joel will leave and he can go back to being alone. With no one to keep him company and no other entertainment than a stack of porno mags and comic books, Bill's days are spent simply reinforcing his traps and collecting more food or ammo, just so he can do the same thing the next day, and the next day, until he dies of old age, starvation, or is finally taken out. There is no real purpose to his life other than to keep sucking oxygen. He believes keeping a life practically devoid of meaning is better than losing it for the sake of someone else. It is a selfish way to live, but successful in keeping someone alive. And it's the exact path that Joel is heading down. When we meet Joel at the beginning of the game, he is almost as jaded and distant as Bill, merely doing his job in the Q zone while smuggling items to make ends meet. His only human connection is Tess, and while he tries to keep the relationship mainly physical, building up emotional walls to keep himself from the pain of loss, there are underlying feelings he has for her that he might not want to face. When he meets Ellie, she is just a job to him. She is little more than cargo. And when Tess dies, the last person he truly connected with, the only reason he kept going, pushed to get Ellie to the Fireflies, was Tess. The hope she inspired that things might be better. He cared for her, and she cared about the mission, so he would care about the mission until it was complete. He had no guarantee that the cure could be found. After dropping Ellie off, he was going to keep doing what he had been doing, surviving. And now, with no one to care for, he would have had no reason to do anything other than to hold himself off from the world, scrounging for more food, more bullets, more alcohol and rags just to keep himself alive for one more miserable day. But after this interaction with Bill, something changed in Joel that would alter the course of the rest of his life. The The world of The Last of Us has one rule that persists in every chapter of its story. Caring for anyone other than yourself is the easiest way to get yourself killed. Take a look at every situation where one character cared about another. Tess gets bit trying to keep Ellie safe, and tries to buy Joel and Ellie more time to escape by being a distraction for the Fedra forces. Riley cared for Ellie and wanted to show her a good time at the mall. She got herself bit and died on that rooftop. Henry did everything he could to get Sam to safety. Sam got bit, so Henry kills his brother and then himself. And Bill is one of, if not the only character to understand that. Bill's stance on human interaction is very clear. Cut yourself off if you want to live. Probably the nicest thing he did for Joel was give him that advice, or at least the only thing he ever did that wasn't directly linked to getting Joel out of his town. And through our short journey with Bill, we see it in action. The traps he has set are effective, but the second he sticks his neck out for someone, everything goes downhill. The battery is nowhere to be found. They run into the bloater. They outrun a horde of infected. They then find Frank. For the first time, Bill expresses an emotion other than irritation or rage at another human being. He's sorrowful, remorseful, and then suddenly, he's over it. The Last of Us is masterful at visual storytelling. Pain is etched onto Bill's face as he goes over the bites on Frank's body. You can practically read his thoughts. And then he looks back to Joel as his expression changes. He remembers what it means to care for someone and hardens his heart against it. Joel tries to sympathize multiple times, telling Bill how sorry he feels for him knowing someone he cared for died. But Bill brushes it off. Just wants to make sure his debts are finally repaid so Joel and Ellie will leave. And as Joel expresses genuine interest and respect in Ellie for holding her own, all Bill has to say is,
"You ain't gonna make it."
Joel sees this husk of a man only living for himself in abject misery. He's surviving, but there's no joy in his life. Something is clearly broken in him, and Joel can see exactly what it is. As much as Bill acts like he doesn't care, he is clearly hurting from the loss of Frank, but instead he brushes it off and continues on with no other point to life than simply not dying. And Joel recognizes this. He sees it for what it is. From this point, as he and Ellie drive off, their relationship shifts ever so slightly. He starts to open up. Just a fraction. Instead of treating her like cargo, he treats her like the young girl she is. He dares to let himself care, because if you live like Bill in agony every day, then what is the point of living at all? And in the end, Bill was right. Joel opened himself up. He came to realize he loved Ellie. He sacrificed everything for her and tried to open himself up to others because of it. And look where he ended up because of that. Now, this isn't to say that we all should live like Bill, cutting ties with our friends and family so we won't ever feel hurt or get distracted. Bill's way is a good way to survive, but not to live. But in the end, Joel didn't listen to his warning, and it ended up getting him killed. We never find out if Bill ended up surviving, but that was never his point. The point of the game was not about enduring and surviving, but finding a reason to keep on going. Finding something to fight for. Bill's interactions with Ellie are so funny and clever, and the relationship he had with Joel was harsh and reflective of the world that they lived in. But his impact on the story and the message overall is severely overlooked. It's the true turning point for Joel as a character, the first domino to fall that cascaded into an intense overhaul of his worldview.
I swear.